Well, here we are, last week 15. So this video is going to be brief. Basically, I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of my reactions to the presentations from the career intervention proposal for the discussion board for last week, and then just a couple updates and goodbyes. So first off, so discussion board reactions. I think so many of you had great, actually all of you, everything that I've seen so far has been great about specifically about the populations that you want to help. I think that's so great. Just it's really cool to see your interest areas, how you're kind of synthesizing some important things about theory to support those populations. And yeah, I could kind of see that you are all taking the creativity and bringing in, you know, the areas that are important to you into this paper, which is exactly the purpose. So some areas for growth. Actually, I don't even know if I can say that because, you know, it's just the presentations, but just something to really emphasize as you're finishing up this week with your paper. Be sure to make the clear link between theory, the career theory that you mentioned, and your intervention. So sometimes what I saw was just basically a slide on career theory and an intervention without any clear indication of how they even relate. Then there are some examples of, like, I guess, for example, one that could be done pretty smoothly is like the Block and Richmond applying the 7 themes of spirituality to career counseling. And so doing basically an intervention where each session you focus on one of those themes, you know, so that's where, you know, the approach or theory. And I would be okay with Block and Richmond's being utilized, even though it doesn't necessarily, it's kind of an integrative theory. But yeah, so it's pretty clear if you talk about, okay, here are the themes from Block and Richmond, and then in the intervention for each session, I'll be going over each one of these themes with the client or clients in the group. So it doesn't have to be that exactly, you know, directly related, but there has to be a clear link of, you know, how is this career theory influencing, or what's the word I'm looking for, informing your intervention. So what I really strongly recommend is either at the end of your career theory section of your paper, talking about the link. So here's how the career theory relates to the intervention, or maybe either at the end of the intervention section or at the start, just talking about it, making sure that there's a discussion of how you're making sense of the link between career theory and your intervention. Let me see here at my notes. Okay, so make sure that your intervention is specific. So I'm not saying you have to say, here's exactly every word I'm going to say, and here's what I'll say to a client if they say this. Like, you don't have to get that, you know, into the details. But for example, if you're doing a one-on-one intervention with the client, even if it's like more like a qualitative, like just talking about some general topics, you can say, okay, so in the individual sessions, like I anticipate talking about X, about Y, about Z. Here's maybe some questions that I might ask that are related to these 3 different areas. So session 1 might look like this, you know, just providing some context of kind of what you envision, even if it alters or changes, or if you're open to the intervention being flexible, that's okay. You can name all that. But if there isn't like a clear, you know, step-by-step of here's how it's going to go, you might provide just like a brief example of like, here's how a session might go. Counselor, client, here's what they might say, here's how I might respond to clearly address the theory in this intervention. So those are just a few ideas, but, you know, yeah, the main idea is like, what's the timeline? Is it going to just be, you know, maybe an 8-week group? Is it going to be a year-long group? Is it going to be a year-long intervention? Is it going to be a 1-session intervention? Kind of talk about the timeline too, because then that kind of helps you orient to what are you going to do then? If you have a timeline, what do you have to work with? Let's see. Okay, so this might kind of sound counterintuitive or kind of contradictory possibly, but also, like, I'm asking you to be really thoughtful of what career theory you're using and how it influences and informs the intervention. At the same time, don't get too complicated. I think if you're trying to do too many things in the intervention, too many kind of vastly different things, it can get overwhelming. So like you can do, in the end, you can do whatever you want, but just make sure that there's a clear thread of how the different things that you're doing relate to one another. I think one thing that I saw was like doing some individual sessions that then lead to a workshop type thing or some sort of experience, and then a follow-up sessions to see how that went. That's totally fine because there's that clear thread. But sometimes like if you're just saying, I might do this and this and this and this, but there's no like unifying, clarity of how they're going to work together, that's where it's going to be a little nebulous of like, wait, so how is this going to work? Why are they related? Why is this here? Why is that there? So you kind of got to bring those elements together if you're going to bring in a lot of different things. But the intervention can also be pretty clear cut. And here's the intervention, the one thing that I plan on doing. Here's the sequence of it, period. But I guess what I'm getting at is precision is normally best when you're kind of planning like a targeted intervention. It can still account for and plan for, flexibility and responding to the client needs, but you need to have a clarity of like, what is my key goal? What's the key outcome that I'm trying to help? And how does theory inform my anticipated key goal and outcome? Okay, hopefully those are a few helpful thoughts. Once again, several of you have been reaching out to me via email, meeting with me via Zoom. Keep doing that. Keep reaching out to me all next week. I'm available to chat. Obviously, we'd have to just coordinate when it will work with our schedules, but I want to be available to you as you're finalizing and as you have some questions. The next thing, switching gears. Be sure to fill out the course evaluation. I really appreciate the feedback. What I have here in my notes is I want to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly. Whatever your experience has been. Hopefully, it's been constructive and positive. And always know, like, even if you didn't feel comfortable for any reason to have that conversation with me, if there were things that were concerning to you, I would encourage you to, whether you are with me in a class in the future or with other professors, feel free to, have those conversations during the semester too. That might feel kind of threatening possibly. But I hope that you feel that you can trust the faculty at Adams State to, be responsive to your needs and to your experience. So that definitely applies to me. I'm happy to hear the feedback. So just want to encourage you to fill out those course evals. And I guess with that, goodbye. We're done. I've really enjoyed the experience being your professor, your instructor for this class. I hope that you have seen how career is applicable to mental health, to school, how it's, can be one of the central aspects for, people's concerns as well as their lives, where they spend a lot of their time. So one of the key goals is just to help you see, like, it's not much different than personal counseling. Career is personal. So I hope that has always been one of my key takeaways. And I hope that whatever your takeaways, that they're positive, that they're personally meaningful, and as well as, in your professional pursuits as a counselor, I hope they're meaningful. So I'll be kind of teaching classes here and there as an adjunct professor. So possibly I'll see you later and be your instructor in other places. But if not, I wish you the best in your professional pursuits and in your journey to being a counselor. So thanks for the class and the great semester.